Is this international break restful or frustrating for Ted Lasso? Let's find out now. Hey everyone, it's Wednesday, which means it's Ted Lasso Day. It's episode 10 of season 3, International Break. It comes to Apple TV Plus on May 17th, 2023. So this is a 12 episode season. This is the 10th episode. So they should be wrapping up some of these storylines. And they do. My hot take is, look, I think this is kind of between a rent or a watch. I liked it. It really kind of felt like a setup episode to me. There is some really great character progression and some really nice moments. But overall, I think it's probably a rental because this is definitely a crucial episode for the overall season, but it also doesn't feel like it truly resolved a ton. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the episode, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and go into a recap. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the recap section. If you don't want to know what happened in this episode, I would turn it off at the recap section. But before that, I'll keep it vague. I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So you can keep watching, just get my thoughts. So in Ted Lasso season 3 episode 10, it's called International Break. As you can imagine, that means there is an international break. If you're not a soccer person, international break is when the national teams play each other for friendlies or sometimes for tournaments. Usually it's for a friendly or two, just so the national teams can evaluate their players, figure out who they're going to call up for the next big competition. That usually means like a 2-week break in the overall main season, the main soccer season. And so that is what is happening here. It's an international break where some players are getting called up to play for the national teams and other players just get to kind of relax. Now, during this time, there is some drama with the actual call-ups, and then there is some drama with the things that happen in between. There's a little bit of soccer action and a whole lot of character development, and that has important ramifications for kind of the rest of this season. So, things I liked about this episode. The first, I like Nate's development. They've been kind of rehabilitating Nate's character throughout this season, and now it feels like he is really kind of coming into his own. He has some nice scenes where he tries to make amends for certain things he's done, tries to kind of like come to terms with some of the things that have happened. And, you know, it's nice to see kind of like nice Nate back. I didn't like jerk Nate. I thought that felt very kind of like fake and also very kind of artificial. It's nice to have nice Nate back. The second thing I liked, I'll call it girl bosses. There are some really nice kind of scenes and story arcs with both Keeley and Rebecca during this episode. You get to see them both grow stronger and more independent, but in very different ways. They progress separately, but there was a nice kind of overarching theme of this episode about kind of like these two female characters growing into their own. And the last thing I like, look, it has some nice heart. There's a good amount of heartfelt moments in this episode. You get some moments that'll give you some warm fuzzies. You get some moments that, you know, you come to expect from Ted Lasso. So this is definitely an episode that will make you smile. So things I didn't love as much about this episode. The first, I'll call it like a time warp. This episode kind of jumps from where episode 9 ended. It was not a clean break. There definitely were some things that happened that you just only hear about at the start. There's like a soccer news program that tells you the new state of AFC Richmond and also some developments for some of the main characters. It felt weird not seeing any of this and just kind of finding out at the start of this next episode. It makes me wonder if they like scrapped it or if they always just wanted to have this big chunk that they didn't really get into, but it felt odd. Like there were some scenes that I kind of wish I would have been able to see. They just don't get to because they don't show them. So the second thing I didn't love as much is there's this like kid imagery that happens. There's one character who like envisions all these people as kids to help kind of ease their tension when they're addressing them. It just felt weird. Like it didn't really feel like it had much of a relation to anything that really happened, and it didn't also feel needed. It felt like they didn't have to have this like weird section. It kind of started off with just that person seeing themselves as a kid, and then they saw a bunch of other people as a kid. It felt tacked on. It didn't really kind of relate to much that was going on. It just kind of felt odd. So I don't know. I didn't love it as much. I didn't think it was necessary. The third thing I didn't love is Akubu. Like, this is the character that is portrayed by Sam Richardson, who is just a very funny, fantastic actor. I just don't like his character. He just doesn't really come off as anyone I really kind of want to learn more about. He is kind of harsh to be harsh. And he just kind of suddenly appears in this episode and has a very prominent role. And I didn't like him when he first made his appearance, and I still don't like him. So, you know, I guess at least I'm consistent. And the last thing I didn't love as much, I kind of mentioned this during the hot take, is this feels really like a setup episode. Like some things get resolved, some character growth happens, but overall, this feels like something that is just kind of setting up the last 2 episodes. And we're getting close to the end of this season. It's a 12 episode season. So I expected, I don't know, maybe some more resolution, some bigger shifts that happen. And it feels like they're saving those for later, which I guess maybe makes those last two episodes really impactful and really important. But it made this episode just kind of feel like a pathway. It felt like a necessary evil to get to the big things that we wanted to happen. So that is Ted Lasso season 3, episode 10. It's coming to Apple TV Plus on May 17th, 2023. You can check it out then. I'm going to get into the recap. So if you don't want to know what happens, there will be spoilers here. So I would turn it off now. But if you maybe have already seen it or you just kind of want to find out what happened, then let's keep going. So like I said, during this episode, there is an international break and some players get called up for their national teams. There are some happy surprises, but the big kind of negative is Sam does not get called up for Nigeria. Now remember, during the first Akubu episode, he made an offer to Sam to come play for him in his like super team. And Sam said no, he's going to stay with Richmond. And that's when Akubu like switched, he snapped, he insulted him and said that he would never play for his national team. And that seems to be holding true. The Nigerian team gets called up and Sam doesn't get called up. Even though his form is like super hot, he is scoring like crazy, he's playing out of his mind, he doesn't get called up. So that's a big negative for Sam. But Jamie gets called up, Van Dam gets called up, Danny gets called up, Bumbercatch gets called up, and Colin gets called up. So there's a decent number of AFC Richmond players who do get called up for this international break. Now, one thing that's funny is that Danny and Van Dam, Danny gets called up for Mexico, Van Dam gets called up for Canada, and they are playing each other. And, you know, Van Dam's just like, hey, like, good luck. It'll be great to see you. And Danny just switches. He's like, you are now my enemy. You are not my teammate. And like for the entire episode, he is just brutally mean to Van Dam, which I thought was pretty fun. It was kind of like a nice switch for Danny's character. But during this break, there are also some major character developments that happen. So there are kind of three main storylines during this break. So there are kind of three main storylines during this break. There's a Rebecca storyline, a Keeley storyline that has tangentially related to Roy, and then also a Nate storyline. So in the Rebecca storyline, she gets an invitation from Rupert to join this kind of discussion for a super league. It's been something that's been discussed in major soccer, like a real world soccer, whatever you want to call it, a super league of like the best of the best teams that are only going to play each other and just kind of monopolize all the fan interest. It was discussed in, I don't know, real life soccer, and then it kind of fell apart when people found out about it. So in Ted Lasso, Akubu, who makes a return in this episode, is organizing his own super league, and they are inviting AFC Richmond. Rebecca thinks maybe it's just Rupert feeling sorry for her, maybe it's Rupert just wanting a female in the room because it's going to be a lot of white males. She doesn't know why, but she decides to go and kind of get a seat at the table. So during the meeting, they find out that the Super League will boost their revenues, they'll boost their overall pocketbooks, but it might kind of be more expensive for fans. It might price some fans out of the game. And Rebecca takes offense to this. She yells at them. She tells a story about Rupert when he like first went to an AFC Richmond game. He like snuck in because he couldn't afford a ticket, and like that caused him to fall in love with the team. And then he bought the team later after he became successful. And she's like, "Why are you doing this? Why would you join this league? You all have plenty of money. There's no need for more money," which I don't know, if you've watched soccer, there's always need for more money because you can always get better players. But to her point, all these people are personally wealthy enough. And so they don't need to do this. And they're going to kind of hurt the fan experience. Fans are going to maybe not be able to watch the games. They're not going to be able to afford the tickets. You're going to like lose that connection with the fans that makes soccer so special. So this speech appears to kind of derail this whole discussion, because after the speech, you see Akubu like storm out of the room and everyone has like food on them. Like it seems like he threw a tantrum and threw food on everyone. And it seems like that causes the Super League to fall apart. So yay, Rebecca, like yay, let's help the fans. And after this, Rupert has been very nice to Rebecca this entire time. And it's interesting. Maybe he's being nice, but maybe you get the sense that maybe there's some other motive. And after this, after they're like laughing about this whole situation, he tries to kiss her. And thankfully, Rebecca pulls back. She says, no, like, what are you doing? And she leaves. So I did like that. I like that Rebecca kind of like stood her ground and also made clear that was not like, made clear that, you know, I think maybe she's happy to be like friends and business rivals, but not that, which was good. So the next storyline is kind of Keeley's storyline. And what you find out at the start is that Keeley's PR business is getting shut down. Jack pulled the funding. She says that it wasn't her, it was like her group that pulled the funding, but you kind of get the sense that maybe Jack was involved because she was a little upset that Keeley broke up with her. And so her PR company is getting shut down. This causes her to spiral into a depression, or she's just trying to figure out what to do. Like she loves being the boss. She loves having this company. She loves everything it does. And so that then kind of causes her to be upset. And she ends up in the bar with May. She never met May before, but she gets some advice from May. And that, I think, causes her to feel like she's going to try to take this problem on head on. She's been ignoring Rebecca's texts for a while. And so that causes her to not want to respond. Now, during this time, Roy also has some character development too. So it's kind of a Keeley Roy, dual arc, because Roy goes to a party for his niece Phoebe, and it's a like Roy party, and he gets this like horrible tie-dye shirt that she made for him, and as a sweet gesture, Roy starts wearing it because she made it for him. It was also really fun because Jamie comes to this party because Phoebe says, I had to invite your best friend. You're always talking about Jamie. You're always spending time with him. And Jamie gets him like a really sweet gift. So I guess maybe they are kind of best friends. They did become pretty good friends during the Amsterdam episode. So now maybe that is kind of coming to fruition. So Roy walks Phoebe to school in his horrible tie-dye shirt. And there he meets the teacher that he met, I don't know, last season, I think. He like flirted with her, but he was with Keeley. He didn't like do anything to her, but they'd flirted before. And now that he's single, she flirts with him again. But unfortunately for that teacher, she never seems to kind of succeed with Roy. And this causes her discussion with him. Like she basically tells Roy to like figure out what he wants and to kind of go for it. And Roy kind of thinks about it and he has an epiphany and he says, thank you. And he like leaves. He goes to Keeley's house. And Roy writes her a note. He says that Keeley never did anything wrong, that Roy was kind of like in his own head. He was messed up on his own and didn't want to kind of drag Keeley down. So he pulled away from her. But that she's great and he loves her and he apologizes for what he did. So that's a sweet scene. Roy apologizes to Keeley. And then later in the episode, it seems like they get together. So it seems like maybe the Keeley-Roy relationship is back. Now, Keeley still needs to have her business. So later in the episode, she finally returns Rebecca's text. Rebecca had been texting her all the time, wondering like what was going on. Keeley was depressed because of her business, so she didn't respond. She finally responds, and when Rebecca comes over, Keeley just kind of like tells her what happened. And Rebecca is like, how much, how much funding did Jack pull out? And she like writes it down on a paper because, she's like, this is so much. And she gives it to Rebecca. She's like, I mean, I'll handle it. That's fine. Like I've got that much cash. And she's like, no, you can't, which is generally a good idea. You probably shouldn't mix friends with business. But Rebecca counters that with my money, my choice. And so Rebecca funds Keeley, and now Keeley's PR firm is back. There was a 1-episode hiatus of her PR firm, and now it's back. So that was Keeley's storyline. Now, Nate's storyline. Nate, for some reason, quit West Ham. It seems like the kind of night with Rupert, when Rupert tried to like sabotage his relationship, really ate at Nate. Maybe he didn't like what that was doing. Maybe he didn't like, what he thought he was becoming. They don't really get a ton of explanation, but Nate quit his job, just like abruptly quit. So he is just kind of depressed the entire time. He's moping, he's sad. And he eventually goes back to his parents' house where he kind of rediscovers like some of the things he loved. He like plays violin. Apparently Nate played violin. Who knew? And apparently it was really, really good. But his dad pushed him too hard because his dad recognized his genius. And so when his dad sees him playing, he like says how much he liked to hear him play. And Nate's like, what do you mean? Like, you always berated me. You always told me I had to get better. And his dad kind of admits that he pushed him too hard. He like recognized that Nate was brilliant and wanted him to be perfect at everything. And that probably wasn't the right way. And Nate's like, I just wanted to play. I just wanted to play violin. And essentially his dad kind of killed that love for him. So you get the sense that maybe some of these obsessive things with him, some of these like need to be the best, was from Nate's dad kind of putting that pressure on him. So when Nate kind of comes to this realization, he explores the house, he finds some other stuff. It seems like he starts to make amends. So one of the really sweet scenes is that Will, the kind of shirt person for AFC Richmond, comes in the locker room later, and all the lockers are set up. Like all the shirts are set up, all the kits are out, all the shoes are ready, and there is a note on there for Will. He opens it up and it says, "I'm sorry, Wonder Kid." So Nate, was very mean to Will, especially when he was rising to prominence. And now it seems like he's recognizing that wasn't right. And so he is trying to make amends. It feels like Nate is trying to make amends. His character is kind of coming back and learning the things that he loved to do. So that is this episode. You don't get a ton of Ted Lasso in this. You don't get a ton of other characters, but you do get kind of 3 main storylines, which I like. I like that they are not kind of overburdening these episodes with a ton of stories, and you get some important character development. Now, what does that mean next? Well, it seems like they are setting up for Nate to come back to Richmond, kind of like how Roy went off to do the pundit thing, hated it, and came back to Richmond. It seems like Nate will probably end up back at Richmond. He's back. He's apologizing to people. Ted and Rebecca are both keeping tabs on him, trying to figure out what happened with him. It seems like maybe he will come back, and hopefully he'll get another chance. And my guess is what'll happen is whole season is going to build up to the next Richmond West Ham game. That'll probably be the final game, the final episode, maybe to determine who is number one in the Premier League. And for that episode, Nate will probably come back into the fold and gonna get his redemption. I assume something that he does will help the team overcome West Ham. Now, this is all speculation. I don't know what's going to happen, but it seems like that would be the big kind of season-ending victory that Ted Lasso has been building to, and that would hopefully kind of send the season off on a high note. That's just kind of my thoughts. I think that's probably where they're going for, but who knows? We'll find out in 2 weeks. So that is Ted Lasso season 3, episode 10. It comes to Apple TV Plus on May 17, 2023. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.